Welcome to the podcast that guides men to demystify and develop their intuition. I'm your host, Doug Beitz. Let's dig into the science and expand your horizons.
The one thing that I'm trying to communicate to men is that there may be a time in your life when your desires, your arousal was somehow forced to be repressed. Please understand that that is a natural part of you, and being able to express that in a healthy way is possible. It doesn't have to be a destructive part of your life. It actually could be a source of creativity. The erotic arousal energy that you experience throughout the day is powerful, and it's not there to put you into shame or guilt or embarrassment.
My guest today, Dr. Nic Natale, is a licensed professional counselor, certified sex therapist, and certified hypnotherapist. His holistic approach to transformation helps people embrace their inner strength. He's passionate about guiding men and couples in reaching new levels of healthy relationships, restoring pieces of the fragmented self, and become more confident lovers. Dr. Nic, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so very much, Doug. It's good to be here, and I hope you're having a fantastic day, my friend.
I am. Dr. Nic and I, we had a chat probably pretty much exactly 24 hours ago before this. And
Almost,
then and we usually schedule these a little bit more of a gap in between them, but just with things, we're back together again this quick. And so I've got a real good feel for like where you're at. And in the last couple of days, I have listened to a few podcasts you've done with other people as well. So so that opened my eyes up to a few things that we didn't talk about yesterday, and that was it was really good. But I'm just curious, straight up, what motivated or what steered your life towards therapy, like for people in the area of like sex, like, and obviously I know a lot of people are challenged in that area, but what moved you into that field?
Yeah, I think that one of the most principal things that I am asked is, this something of this question, kind of what moved you to go into this direction? And to be honest with you, Doug, it really started out with just kind of realizing that this is a topic I'm very comfortable in discussing with other people. And so, though I may be surrounded with people who are uncomfortable with it, for myself, it hadn't always been that case. I've always felt just very comfortable in talking about it. But also something much deeper, much deeper. It's easy to think about just sex and sexuality in simple terms like behavior or actions or things of that nature and this movement. Yes, it's that, but it's also something much deeper, and I personally much more primal than just actions that we do, behaviors that we perform. I think there's something about our sensuality, our sexuality that is on the cellular level about who we are as people. And so I think it's more than just biology, it is something spiritual. It's that intersection that is such a powerful thing. And I am a man who is curious. And so I've always been wanting to just explore this with people. And at the bedrock of my successful therapy is, let's just be curious about what this is and let's explore it together. And so that's kind of how it is. This is a topic that's easy for me to discuss with anyone at any time. You don't have to be crass about it. You don't have to be, street about it. You can just let's just have normal conversations about where people are honestly at when it comes to their sensuality. So it's easy.
I think that's great because I know in my upbringing it was absolute taboo subject. My wife's upbringing, so, like with her family, and like we've been together. This year we're celebrating our 40th wedding anniversary. So, and we were together for like 4 years before that. So my 16th birthday we got together, And we've been around together a long time. And, particularly in my teenage years, I would often joke about stuff, and if it ever was, anything about sex, or, like my girlfriend or now wife would get the kick under the table, or, it's just not a subject. And it's like, so in reality, where, if there is an issue there, where do people get help from? Like, do they go and do they get a magazine? Do they buy a book? Like, and then it's like, I've got this book on the sex therapy. Like, I mean, I don't want anyone to even see I'm reading it. It's traditionally like a taboo thing. So I'm curious, is there a specific uh, thing that's more prevalent that people come to talk to you about? Is there, without obviously talking about specifics with client
Mhm.
confidentiality, but in general, is there a theme that you deal with 70 or 80% of the time is with clients?
Absolutely. Some of that's easy to decide because I do work at this stage of my career primarily with men. And so I see about 70% men, 30% women, and some combination of the genders within there. But so the majority of the time, people are coming to see someone like myself because they have tried so many different things to fix a problem. Maybe that's, and the big three is, erectile dysfunction, lack of sexual desire, and then ejaculate control. That is having difficulty, either premature ejaculation or delayed ejaculation, but it's around ejaculation control. It is 6 o'clock here in the United States, and it's been a day long of therapy already. So I've been talking a lot today already. You may have to cut all that out. I don't care if you do or not. But yeah, it's kind of easy. But the big three are really ED issues, libido issues when it comes to the level of desire, and then ejaculation control. Those are the big three that people usually come to see me. When it comes to women who come to see me, it's primary to either libido, which is primary, or anorgasmia. Just they haven't found their orgasm yet, and they're in need of assistance there. And some of the biggest referrals, again, they try so many different things. They went online, they read the books, they have read the articles, they went to their doctor, and now they're, in a consultation with me, either through formal counseling or a coaching format, and we're kind of working through all that together. And so that's the kind of work that I do.
All right. So, when I put the word out for, looking for guests, and you sent me a message and said, hey, I'm interested. My word I put out was, who wants to talk about men developing their intuition? So I'm curious for you, just in your life in general, or when you're with clients, do you feel, for you personally, that intuition is a thing at all?
Intuition is at the heart of what I do. Again, there is that curiosity piece that sometimes is a part of our therapy. If I'm sitting with someone and we're in a safe environment and we're discussing their most secretive aspect of themselves, where there's potential for shame, embarrassment, guilt to be present, I'm following my intuition on a heartbeat level, moment by moment, as we're kind of walking through these different aspects with these individuals that I deeply love and deeply respect. And so intuition is guiding that at each step. So even when I am working with someone and I have something I would like to explore with them, one of the ways that I interact with them is by saying, I think I'd like to offer an observation. This is something I'm just, seeing and believing and maybe intuitive about internally myself. Now, I want you to consider A, B, and C, and offer an observation. Now, when my client hears that, I'm already setting them up, letting them know they can discard that. They can internalize that. They can use that. We can process around it. And we can toss away just what doesn't fit. And we can use that as a springboard to go forward if it fits for them. And so um, Doug, what really got me so curious about your work is all that's driven by intuition. All that is driven by me learning, and this is something I hope that all men can do, is me learning to trust myself, to go with what my intuition is saying. And I can present it to the world, for example, my clients, or even to my spouse, in such a way that they can hear it without it being imposed upon them. And so I want to communicate what I'm thinking, what I imagine, what my intuition may be saying. And I just want them to try it on. And that's it. And I don't carry any sense of expectation that they must believe what I'm saying to them. No, this is what my intuition is sharing with me, and I want to share it then with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm just curious, do you ever get unusual stuff come through that you're thinking, this doesn't make sense at all? Like,
Oh, internally for me,
yeah.
yeah.
Or I mean, even if it, it's like, gee, is this for the client? Is this for me? If I verbalize this, are they going to think I'm nuts? Does that ever happen?
I because of the way that we set it up, and I'm always very respectful. I have plenty of times when the client has heard what I said, and their response after a few moments of internalizing, just kind of see if it fits or not, they'll be honest with me and say, Dr. Nick, I don't know if any of that kind of fits right now. Um, and I just accept that and say, oh, thank you for sharing. It gives me an opportunity to correct the work and the scope of the work that I'm doing with that person because I've vocalized it. Now I'm not operating off of it in the back of my mind, in myself, in some way that just doesn't fit. I've just been open about it.
Mm.
But more times than not, and I'm going to actually put it at a shocking number, 9 out of 10 times, there's significant pieces of what I'm offering that there's like, I never thought about it that way. I never realized quite that. I can give you an example, just one quick thing. Um, I was working with a gentleman and he had a particular type of kink related to a particular style of a woman's shoe. And he also disclosed to me that based on his age and everything else, that he was one who probably stumbled upon, what we call pornography in a paper edition. And I just asked him this kind of randomly one day, we haven't quite gotten there yet. And he says, did you happen to discover your dad's magazines in their bedroom? And he just looked at me and like, what do you mean? Well, I was curious, and of course, throw it out if it doesn't fit, but did you happen to discover your dad's magazines in his or their bedroom? And he said, yeah, yeah. Where did you where did you hide when you were looking through dad's magazines? He hid in the closet. He hid in the closet, surrounded by all the shoes that were in there, including, and this is something that you kind of have to know to kind of know where the pieces went, including the fact that the particular style shoe that he enjoys his wife or any partner he happens to be with to wear is the same style shoe that his mother wore. And we just let it kind of sit out there, no judgment, no embarrassment. It's like, and it was intuition. It was intuition to kind of like, and when I kind of just tossed that out there and he was unpacking it, because I didn't throw all that out there. He's the one who's kind of went down there. Um, it just became like, oh, through the unique moments when, as a very young adolescent, when those sensations were being experienced for the first time, they were surrounded by also other sensations, other sights, other smells, other textures of women's shoes.
Yeah. So the energy, the emotion that he felt as that
Point.
whatever age he was, young boy, early teenager, whatever, it's stuck, and it's like an electrical charge, and it's
Yeah,
stuck, and it's like a magnetic, boom, and it's still there. And I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing, but it's just
yeah,
it's
not good
there.
or bad. It's
And
there.
yeah, and if he still likes it, that's fine. It stays stuck there. And if he wants to get rid of it, he just needs help to demagnetize that emotion. To the memory will still be there, but it won't have the charge anymore. But that's his choice whether he wants to let it go or not. But that's
Exactly.
very interesting. But yeah, like his first experience of it would be very emotional because yeah, I can remember finding those magazines at my dad's work because, and they weren't dad's. I'm not saying dad didn't have them, but these weren't his.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
actually, when I was 12, we lived at a rock quarry. We were the caretakers for a year. And so on the week, I had a little mini bike, motorbike, and I would ride all around the place. And on the weekends, and it was shut down on Saturday and Sunday. And so I'd go up around near where the work sheds were. I'd have to, need some gas for my tank and go up there. And the guys had the little lunchroom on the side, and on the table were magazines. And, this was just the men's domain, in a rock quarry, blue collar workers. And I was like, whoa, dude, what did I tell the kids at school about this on Monday? Like, like this is like,
Yeah.
mind boggling. Yeah, 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 interesting. Yeah. But I don't enjoy, rock quarries that much, I can tell you.
I
So
bet not. I
it
bet
didn't
not.
stick. No, it didn't stick that one. No. Yeah. Wow. That very interesting. Yeah. And like saying intuition coming through. And it was interesting that you said earlier about trusting. And so that's why I guess I alluded to, do you ever have anything come through that could sometimes not make sense to you? And it sounds like you do trust it enough to verbalize it to a client if you feel it's the right, if intuitively you feel it's the right thing to do. But I guess also too, it'd be nice, and this is one reason I think it'd be great for men to develop their intuition is, and to learn to trust themselves and to trust things, so that, if they're having issues in their life in whatever area of sex or relationships or anything at work, whatever, if some information comes through, they can start to trust it. And the more you trust it, it's like a muscle. The more it'll, or like a muscle, the less you use it, the less, it'll be there for you. So yeah, very
Well,
interesting.
one of the concerns that I have when it comes to men in general, and I made a point of this in my first book, I I believe that there is men out there now who are sexually aroused and they are unsure exactly what to do with their sensuality, their arousal, to the point that they actually have stopped trusting it altogether. And so, one of the things that when it comes to intuition, that I sometimes would like to for men to just to kind of hear is, you can be aroused, you can be excited about something that you see, something that excites you, and it can serve you. That energy can serve you well. It's However, oftentimes in our society, what we're taught is to shut that down, to repress it. That's unhealthy, or that's going to be bad for you in some way. Or if you're in a religious context, and then that somehow is a sin. But the reality of it is, once a man learns that he can actually be aroused, enjoy what is taking place around him, he can actually use that intuition and energy for very creative and powerful purposes. And that's something that I'm also trying to just make sure that guys just understand is that when you repress and suppress those type of things, you're actually bringing more detriment and harm to you. It makes it a part of you feel unsafe. And so you're right. It is a skill in terms of how do we deal with that. But the reality is we need to be, as men, able to deal with our sensuality and our arousal.
Mm, yeah, very interesting. Yeah, that's and for me, I've not heard a lot of this information before, so I'm just sort of pondering, and yeah, it's powerful, and yeah, I think this is a great um, not a twist, but like just another little angle for men to look at in their lives of why we do things. Usually I'm talking about, I'm definitely bringing in emotions into the whole thing. But, now in the area of sexuality, it's, I think most men and women would find um, the sexual experience emotional. And so you're bringing like a different side of it that I know I don't normally talk about on this podcast, and not because it's like a taboo subject, just something that I've not thought of. But emotions are such a big part of our life, and that when you look at the word motion, energy in motion, and we're energetic beings, and the sexual experience can be very energetic. There's a lot of energy used during that experience. So yeah, it's a pretty important thing, and it's just I think it's probably deliberate that it's been shut down and become such a taboo subject to talk about in the mainstream. And
Yes.
yeah, it's yeah, it's pretty healthy the service that you offer. And are there many people around who offer the services that you do?
There aren't a whole lot of individuals who are men and who are sex therapists. I think I'm certified as a sex therapist through an organization called ASET, and that's the American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists. And they're a certification body. And they're probably the largest and most well known around the world. And each country kind of has their own regulations about how they want to do that, just like each state in the United States have their kind of own regulations about how they do that. But like, for example, in my own state of South Carolina, there's only like four of us um, who are working in this particular area who are certified to do so. Now, there's lots of general counselors and marriage family therapists and things like that. But those who specifically work in the area of sex and sexuality, who are certified and abundantly trained to do so, there's fewer and fewer of us out there. And that's because of a variety of different reasons. What I love is there's a lot of people who are starting to become very interested in this field. And matter of fact, I'm actually training two individuals right now. But when it comes to men, there's actually very few of us who are in this particular field. And we know that psychology and therapy and counseling in general is predominantly, at least here in the United States, is a feminine energy dominated profession. When it comes to sex therapy, like I can go into a conference, there may be 1,000 people, but there may be less than 20 men there.
Oh,
So,
jeez.
there's just not a lot of us. I am the only one that I know of in the state of South Carolina that is certified as a sex therapist.
And
And so there's
what population does your state have? How many million people?
oh 3 or 4 million. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
So my schedule is packed. My schedule is packed.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh, there's a lot of individuals here
Yeah.
who just don't have access to good quality information when it comes to sex and sensuality and intimacy and dealing with problematic sexual behavior. That's commonly called sex addiction. We call it problematic sexual behavior, but that's predominantly the work that I do.
Yeah. Wow.
One of the things that it doesn't surprise me though that this may be taking you by surprise, but like for example, when I'm working with men, I just was working with a gentleman today, and he's have had and experienced problematic sexual behavior for a number of years. Pornography has been his general coping mechanism for stress and tension and things like that throughout the years. And we're just talking about how he is using that form of coping to deal with all these emotions. And one of the things that he has conditioned himself to believe is, this is going to work and this is going to be the best thing for him. Of course, it has created all kinds of havoc in his life when it comes to his relationship with his marriage, with his kids, and things of that nature as well. It even almost cost him a job one time. And so at this point, it's definitely problematic behavior. And what we begin to unpack, and he's beginning to really realize, is that this is, he thinks he's following his instinct, when in fact he needs to be able to be intuitive enough to see how these emotions could be directed and pointed in another way. And again, there may be something that he sees as just, hey, this is just about arousal. And we're like, there's a little bit more here. And we need to be able to unpack that and get him started moving in the right direction, which I see him starting to do. There's other ways to address it. And so it's just interesting work for me.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about that. You're saying that like that, the pornography's potentially, I'll use the word clouding. He's causing static so that he can't tap into his intuition properly, like tuning into the old, we talked yesterday, you're a few years younger than me, but probably both of our first cars had an old AM FM radio in,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
we
Woo!
weren't listening to Spotify, and Spotify wasn't born yet. And when you if you had the old dial on the car and you dialed it, there was static in between stations. And then we got the newer radio with the push button, so it flicked from one station to the other. So we bypassed the static. And so I guess the pornography is causing static in his life, or not just that gentleman, but anyone's life who persists with things like pornography. It stops them, it's clouding their judgment, it's stopping them seeing a bigger picture of, particularly when there's emotions involved. It's yeah, I'm not even sure how to unpack all that, or the thoughts on that, but I'm sure there's more to that, with the energy, and the lack of clarity. Um, mm,
See, when he's interpreting, I do believe that he's misinterpreting that static as, and this is the way to release that and to deal with it. And I'm hoping that he will be able to see that energy as something that he does not just has to release through a behavior that is going to be destructive, but rather what would be like to actually use it for creativity's sake, use it for a project, use it for even his exercise. There's other ways to channel that energy that he is feeling. And it doesn't have to just go in this one direction.
mm,
There's alternatives out there, but it requires a moment of this realization that what's taking place is more than just behavioral. There's something else internal. And this is sometimes where guys, especially guys in America here, may wrestle with, especially in my part of the country, is just tapping into their emotions, recognizing it for what it is, and being able to work through that. Is not something that is often readily expressed as part of life, but it is a wonderful part of life to be able to use that energy for the reason why the universe gave it to us in to begin with, even if that's something like tension and frustration and struggle. There's good positive stuff to do with that energy as well. And so, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. I hear you there. So we talked yesterday too about, my second most favorite thing, my favorite thing's intuition. My second most favorite thing's synchronicities. And yeah, we sort of had a bit of a chat about that. And you shared a few, I'm just, you don't have to, but if you're willing to sort of share some of the things we talked about yesterday that you find in your life with when, and if anyone's not sure what I mean by synchronicity, for me, it's just sort of like a reoccurrence more than once of something happening that doesn't normally happen. Um, to it's sort of almost like a guidance from an unseen realm trying to get your attention to say, hey, look at this, and yeah.
Doug, when we had that conversation yesterday, I knew that I would love to be a part of your world and what's going on because the message here is so important. The way that I view synchronicity as well has a spiritual component to it because I do recall deep, wonderful days in my childhood. We lived on a piece of property that we had about 40 to 60 acres of woodlands that I just grew up in. So I really spent a good amount of my formative years being in that environment and watching the rhythms of the seasons, watching the rhythms of the plant life and the animal life. And I most certainly wasn't a hunter of any type, but being able to just kind of watch the movement throughout the seasons of all these things. And they began to take on a special meaning to me where even to this day, 50 years later, there is a lot that goes on in the environment around the nature around me that I still pay special attention to and how that speaks to my life. And even when I met my wife, there has been moments where I feel as though I had encounters early on that pointed to her as being the one I need to be with. There's a clear memory that I have that is so unique and so special that I cherish it. I don't even know how I would want to put it out there to the public in an arena like this, but I remember it clearly, and it almost as if it happened again decades later when I met my wife. And I'm sitting here saying, have I met you before? Did I know you before? How could that even be possible? And these synchronicities, again, to me, are connected to my spiritual life because I've always had, if you will, my heartbeat close to the rhythms of the earth. And I've kind of watched. And so I believe that still there's rhythms and there's even individuals and creatures and things that we don't quite even understand that continues to speak into that for me that I can't see, I can't understand, but I know that it's there and I know that it's real. And it's a powerful experience. And so I'm interested to hear about some of your amazing experiences. But I can tell you, me meeting Bree, I think I met her twice. I once as like a 14-year-old boy in the woods, and one much later in life. But it's too simplistic to call it deja vu. It's more experiential than that. Um, but I'd love to hear some of your stories.
Yeah. Well, with just what you're saying there, like we're all energetic, and there's energy there. And I've read stories where, um, we have guardian angels, etc., and that sort of thing, and they're just sort of like helping to set things, or even, I mean, and I don't expect everyone to believe what I'm about to say. I'm just saying it. This is what I believe, but I believe before we were born that, look, I do believe in life after death. So if you don't believe in life after death, then you'll just switch off for a second, couple of minutes while I say what I'm going to say. But I do believe before we were born that we had conversations with our parents and we
Mm,
chose our parents. And I even believe potentially we've had conversations before we were born with life partners, and
Mm.
where we potentially have said, like that we will recognize, how will we recognize each other? Maybe we'll have this type of experience. It doesn't mean our life's set out and going to happen a certain way, but there'll be some energetic connection there. And I've read some amazing books on this where people talk about guardian angels and things like this, and it just, what you're saying there just makes sense to me. And synchronicities for me, I've had a few. Yesterday we were talking in a little conversation about scuba diving, and I what got me, and you were right. You said you look like a scuba diver, and yeah, I've done over 2,000 scuba dives, so somehow you picked that one up. But how I even got into that synchronistic moments, following hunch, seeing, like, all of a sudden there was a documentary on television about Micronesia. We'd never heard that word before in our life. So, and we were fascinated with just watching in awe at this documentary of this new location that wasn't really that far from Australia, and we'd never heard of it. And then not long after that, I'm in the line in the bank, and here's a guy who I haven't seen in 10 years. We used to go to school together, knew each other pretty well at school, all of a sudden. And I said, "Oh, what have you been up to?" "Oh, my brother and I just got back from a scuba dive trip in Micronesia." And I'm like, "Huh?" Like, it was weird. And then there was a third thing. Something else happened. There was a third thing, like, in the following week. And it was like, wow. So, oh, that's right. My now 31-year-old son, when my wife was pregnant with him, sitting in a doctor's surgery, waiting for her monthly, prenatal checkup sort of thing with the gynecologist. And on the coffee table is this business magazine, and I pick it up, and there's these stories in there about Micronesia and the business opportunities and cheap loans to, for foreigners to put infrastructure in there. And I'm like, wow. So anyway, long story short, through reading that article, a couple of years later, and like, not a couple of years later, because I didn't do anything about it for a while. It took that long. Like, I didn't stop from almost that moment till 2 years later, and
Wow.
we ended up building a scuba dive resort. And then many, like 7 years ago, we decided it was time to move back to Australia. And through amazing synchronicity, and back, like I said, back 30 plus years ago, those synchronicities came weeks or a week or so apart. Now the synchronicity this time came a day apart, and there was only two of them, not three. So maybe I'm becoming a little bit more in tune with them. I'm able to recognize them sooner and
Mm.
act on them. And sometimes I almost, like, something will happen, like we were talking about yesterday. I'll think, oh, this is a big decision I've got to make. This is going to be life-changing if I do this. And then all of a sudden there's just butterflies flying around me or something, like, and it's just, I just
Right.
recognize it. So I don't need two or three things, like clues. And yeah, and then the synchronicities that I recognized very quickly that this was like, wow. Um, we ended up, I won't go into the whole story of it here, but we ended up moving on our business in an extremely remote part of the world, and walked away with about 3 times as much money that we would have happily
Wow.
accepted for the business in a normal sale. And yeah, so yeah, I had a wonderful financial one, but even if you took the finances out of it, the experience of how we did that and how we exited that business, and that was life-changing. The experience of the whole thing, watching it all unfold and come together, and just stepping out in faith and trusting that
Mm.
synchronistic moment, that it was real. It was like a diving board to bounce off and, fly through the air and not be really sure how deep the water was, but hoping that it was deep enough, and off we went. So Yeah, I love synchronicities. I just, to me, it's just this unseen realm out there that has got my back, that loves me, that's benevolent, and is trying to help me, steer me. But it's all my free will. I have absolute choice whether I follow it or not. There's no, you know, push you off. It doesn't push me off the cliff. I have to jump. It's encouraging me to, but it's always my choice. Yeah.
No, there's a couple of different things I picked up on right there that I just love about what you're expressing. Not only to kind of hear the stories in real life, absolutely, but that this is a benevolent ultimate love that is somehow guiding. To me, that is my heartbeat. That is what I believe. I will refer to it as God, that it is guiding, it is there, it is ultimate love, and it is a part of something that is beautiful and wonderful and guiding. Also, what I love about what you said, I also believe is that it is there for you to step into or not. But it's not threatening. It's not as if you do not, then all this terrible stuff is going to happen to you. I refer to that as some type of distorted magical thinking where, I've had three good things, now I'm about to have four bad things that happen to me or something like that. Now, I do believe that there is this guidance out there. And to tell the truth, they are wanting us to have a wonderful, loving, and beautiful experience here as we work through some things that we're here to accomplish. But if we decide not to, it doesn't get retribution toward us. That's not what all this is about. This is about guiding us toward a better and wonderful and loving life. An ultimate love is what I oftentimes call it. Now, one of the things that you may be interested in, and you saw me going through a phone while you're describing your experiences, is have you ever spent any time with Dr. Brian Weiss's Many Lies, Many Masters?
Oh gosh, synchronicity. As I was, as I was went into my bookmarks to select to open Zoom up for this call, and
Mhm.
I've got way too many, and I keep thinking I've got to get rid of some of these bookmarks. I'm flicking through, and there's Brian Weiss, and it said something else, and I'm like, I just stopped there, and I went, and like I flick past that all the time, and I never see it. Just before we did this call, I saw his name there, and I'm thinking, hmm, who's he again? Obviously, I've read his stuff. I've done his. I will go back and look at that. And now, so there's a synchronicity less than an hour
It is
apart.
right there, right
Bang.
there.
And so, what were you saying was the name of his book?
Many Lies, Many Masters.
When I first started to awaken back in 2010-ish, I read
Mhm.
that book, or I listened to the ebook, one of the two. Is it a short book?
Yes, it is. Very short
I
book.
think it's a
Good.
90-minute ebook, and I could not turn it off. I was just like, whoa. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. As a hypnotist, I do use hypnotism a lot. And in our world, our colleagues, that's a book that some people will scoff at and other people will just absolutely adore and praise. And I
Yep,
happen
that's
to
me.
be in that camp. And the reality of it is, I think there's something there even deep within us that we just cannot ignore because the incident for which he is unpacking in that book is not isolated. It's not just one person who's gone through that. There has been many individuals who have experienced very similar things. And I know practitioners that specifically work to help individuals recover and re-experience other things. Um, they're just, as Shakespeare said, they're just many, many things that are under heaven and earth that is not contained in our philosophies. And we just don't, I think it's just arrogance to think that we have a lock on how all this world works and how even the things that we cannot see words. We don't have a lock on that at all. There's more out there, and it's a wonderful and beautiful thing to experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do remember listening to that book. It was one of the, when I was first starting to what I call wake up, my wife
Mm.
called reinventing myself. It was that. And then I listened to that ebook and I was just dumbfounded. I got someone else. I was so like into it. It was I got someone else to listen to it and they were like, "Oh, that was nice." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"What?" And the other one too, the other book that I did read, didn't listen to the ebook in this one, but read it, was the Celestine Prophecy.
Oh,
That
yes.
that sort of like, whoa. And it's just a story. It's
Mhm.
and but yeah, talk about a self-help book that started to get me thinking and take me along the line. And yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I'll have to listen to that Dr. Brian Weiss book again, Many Lives, Many Masters. Yeah. Have you ever heard of a lady called Dolores Cannon?
No, no, no,
No,
no.
okay, hypnotherapist, and she passed away in 2014 in her 80s, and she accidentally, like her husband was a hypnotherapist in for the military. He was, and then she lived on. They always lived on site, and then eventually he had a very bad car accident, was extremely disabled, and she ended up taking over hypnotherapy. And then when they were doing sessions together with, they're helping people stop smoking and things like that on base. And the word got out and people were losing weight and, quitting smoking and stuff. And then all of a sudden, one session just bit like Dr. Brian Weiss's saying, the other voices came through. And it was like, and it grew from there, like to incredible levels. And so she had about 40 years of, and like she said, like back in her day, there was nothing to base any, they had no textbooks to base what they
Right.
were doing on. They were just like winging it. And trying to suppress what was happening and just go back to helping people quit smoking and losing weight, but that was not happening. And yeah, it's and that was a question I was going to talk to you about, the hypnotherapy. And I did, in a podcast I was listening to yesterday of yours, you did a short hypnotherapy session through it. And because it was with a man and a woman, and the lady was, the podcast host, she was quite apprehensive of being hypnotized and that sort of thing. And you did it really good. And the first intro you did with it was with, you took them through like visualizing cutting a slice, yeah, picking a lemon off a tree,
Oh, yes,
smelling
absolutely.
the
Yeah.
the odor. And I have heard that before. And then taking a slice of the lemon and then sort of like squeezing the juice into your mouth, and and asking people, well, what happened? And, well, I salivated. And like, you mean you physically salivated? Yeah. Well, well, that's about as deep as we're going to get with the hypnotherapy. And it's like, oh, okay, well, oh, right. So it's just yeah, you're just going to talk us through, and our you know juices,
That
our
simple,
mental
simple
things. Yeah.
illustration, that
Mm.
simple illustration of the lemon is a very powerful experience because it actually communicates something that hypnotism is attempting to transform in a person. That your mind is powerful, and your mind can create these experiences. And if you're trying to quit smoking, if you're trying to lose weight, if you're trying to deal with pornography in your life, or if you're working, as I use it oftentimes, to help a person with their arousal or ED find their orgasm experience or last a little bit longer in bed, I use it for all those type of things. Again, the mind does affect the body. And the only thing you have to do is think about the lemon, and your mouth will begin to salivate. So you are conditionable, you are trainable, and your mind is powerful, that a thought itself can have an experience. And so all within sex therapy, we have this one line that you're going to hear each therapist express this a little bit different, but the same singular truth. As the mind goes, the body is going to follow. And so that is definitely true when it comes to hypnosis. We're going to help the mind deal with what it needs to deal with, because the mind can help the smoker to stop smoking, the emotional eater to find another way to deal with the emotions, for the person who is struggling with ED to be more pleasant and present in his experiences so that the pleasure is there, not the performance anxiety. And so there's just so many different ways that the mind has more power than what we give it credit for. And so we definitely will even use that illustration of just a lemon.
Yeah.
The lemon is powerful.
Yeah. And that really, I could sense it was diffusing the lady's anxiousness of what's this, hypnosis sort of little session, and we're doing it on the podcast. How is this going to go? But that was
While they were in
so.
their bed.
Oh, well, there you go. And I wasn't. I mean, I was just listening to it while I was working in the
Oh,
yard.
okay.
But yeah, it was, yeah, it just diffused it. The lemon example. It was like, oh, okay, yeah, I get that. Yeah, yeah,
All it is. That's
yeah,
all it is.
yeah.
I don't know. I haven't gone back and listened to that whole podcast myself. The next morning, they sent me a next. I think we did that recording. If you watch the video version of it, they are actually in their bed. There's a husband and wife who does it together, and they do this awkward talk podcast,
Hmm.
and it's a great podcast. And they just had me on, and uh, and so I was doing this hypnosis with them. And the next morning, I get this message and saying, I just want to give you a follow-up. We didn't have a real chance to experience it because the husband had with an ADHD mind, he had something of a less powerful experience. She had a very powerful experience. And I was very grateful to kind of hear from them about her thoughts afterward, where she was off camera, off the podcast. And she had a fantastic experience with that particular hypnosis session. And so, yeah, it was a great gift to receive in the morning. It was like, well, all right.
Yeah, excellent. All right. So I'm just curious, is this like a question that, that we're getting a bit different off topic of what we have been discussing, but I'm just curious, do you feel that you were born at this time in history for any particular reason?
You know, I have struggled with that from time to time, that question. Now, I do believe that my life is my own, and I try to not focus so much on what if there was more and what if there's going to be after. I do believe that I'm here to accomplish something, but I believe that that something could be very, very small. And I have dedicated my life to first helping people through a spiritual journey in a structured religion of Christianity as a minister of the gospel. And then I began to help people one-on-one, just helping people deal with their secret aspects of their lives they don't want anyone else to know about, and providing a safe place for them to be able to do so. What you're called awakening, I'm in the midst of that awakening that started about 3 or 4 years ago now. Mine's relatively new. And it was all of a sudden this realization that the structure that I've been operating with for so long is a container that's kept me trapped, where there's been a suppression of even love toward my fellow man within that container of an organized religion. And I have been able to awaken, if you don't mind me using that word just for simplicity's sake in the conversation, uh, of doing that myself. But I still maintain, though, I am here to accomplish something. And to me, if it's nothing more than communicating to people that love is real and it is powerful, and we have the opportunity to the smallest creature, to the person we're living with, to continually express that love. Sometimes we're going to do that well, and sometimes we're going to do that poorly. But I want to live honestly and openly with who I am, and I want to live in that love towards other people. Now, I don't believe that all that somehow um, questions my beliefs. To me, that enhances all the beliefs I've ever learned, including those beliefs I learned in the forest as a young man, as a boy, running through the woods and listening to the sounds of the tree and the water and the leaves speak to me in a special kind of way, that I look for the synchronicities of life in nature itself. And so I don't know if there's something big I'm supposed to accomplish. I just know that I'm driven by love. And that's what I'm trying to accomplish. And I do that primarily through kindness and then sensuality. And those two things are the way that I kind of express that personally and professionally to other people.
Okay, that's beautiful. We're going to wind up shortly. I've got one last question for you. Is there any advice that you can offer to the men who are listening to improve their lives overall or in any specific way? Is there any final last little tidbit you'd like to add?
I really appreciate that, Doug. The one thing that I'm trying to communicate to men is that there may be a time in your life when your desires, your arousal was somehow forced to be repressed. Um, please understand that that is a natural part of you, and being able to express that in a healthy way is possible. It doesn't have to be a destructive part of your life. It actually could be a source of creativity. The erotic arousal energy that you experience throughout the day is powerful, and it's not there to put you into shame or guilt or embarrassment. But we have to learn as men about how to direct that in appropriate channels. And I would encourage anyone to work with an energy specialist or someone like you, someone like me, to be able to say, okay, how do I actually do this well? Because it doesn't have to just be about shame and guilt and embarrassment. Because I think a lot of men are walking in that quiet desperation of just who they are on that private side of them. Because I had that thought and I shouldn't have had that thought. I had that experience, I shouldn't have had that experience. Let's correct what we need to correct and use our masculinity to help actually make this world a better place. And that begins with self-mastery over our own arousal. That's what I would like to share.
That's beautiful. I'm going to have your contact details in the show notes if anyone has good, because like I say, you're the first person I've had on talking about this subject. And as we found out, there's not many of you, particularly men, in this world. So if there's any men out there that thinking, like this could be a synchronistic moment for some of them. They're like, oh, yesterday or last week, I had this, come up and I thought maybe I should get help in this area. Well, not even help, but just advice. Like this is happening, that's happening, whatever. Have a session, have 5 sessions, have whatever with Dr. Nic. Yeah, so his contact details will be in the show notes. If you've got the inkling within to maybe I should talk to him, click on there, have a look. It'll take you to his website, and you've got an Instagram page. Is that right too?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Instagram
So
is the primary place. And so at Dr. Nic Natale, but all that be in the show notes. And
yeah,
thank you, Doug, so very much. I love the work that you're doing. And please, let's find a time that we may be able to explore some of this stuff even more. And my friend, go well and safe travels in the near future for you. And thank you so very much for having me on tonight.
My pleasure. And I know it's been a wealth of knowledge for everyone listening. Thanks, Dr. Nic.
Thank you.
Well, we're at the end of another thought-provoking episode. Remember to subscribe so you'll be alerted to new episodes. I want to say thank you to the men who are joining me on this journey of intuitive development. I truly hope our time together has expanded your reality and reinforced trust in your ever-reliable gut feeling. Embrace your intuition. It will not lead you astray. Until next time, stay tuned, stay curious, and trust your gut.